Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night at the local time. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about Kharkiv direction, and let's talk about the Ukraine attempts to counterattack the village by the name of Hlyboke. Today we got additional videos, additional updates about Ukraine attempts to do that. On this video we can see the Ukraine Bradley was attacking the edge positions of the Russians inside of the village. As you can see, the video was made by the 92nd Assault Brigade, which also confirms that this unit was also redeployed by the Ukrainians on this direction. Later we got another video from the Ukrainian sources, and on this video we can see how the Ukraine FPV drones were flying above the village by the name of Hlyboke, trying to hunt and to discover the Ukraine positions. And after that they were bombing and attacking them with different types of weapons, including artillery forces, artillery systems, and FPV drones as well, trying to destroy as many as possible warehouses, let's say positions of the armed force of Russian Federation, and so on. Later we got additional update from the Russian side, and the Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours they managed to repel another Ukraine attack. This is the post about that. On Lipsovsky direction, in the area of the settlement, the Ukrainians attempt to counterattack up to 30 people with the support of infantry fighting vehicle, but was unsuccessful and was repulsed. So the Russians managed to repel that attack. The Ukrainians suffered losses. Up to 10 soldiers lost their lives, and Ukraine vehicle also was damaged and destroyed. Anyway, if we return back to video, the Ukraine Bradley was moving along the street, which confirms that the Ukrainians are planning to restore, first of all, control over the territory. Furthermore, we got additional updates from the area between Kupiansk and Zelyone. Also, according to the statement of the group of forces north, the Russians are currently focused to establish complete control over this territory and to get to Zelyone village as close as possible. Now, most likely, let's say more than half or 60% of this territory is already under the Russian control. They're just trying to capture this tree line, the final tree line. After that, we can see the beginning of Ukraine positions. During the day, the Russians also were bombing and attacking the Ukraine forces in Zelyone with significant number of aviation strikes, trying to destroy the Ukraine positions, warehouse, and to break their spirit. Now let's move to Vovchansk direction. We have additional updates from this territory as well, and most of them according to the group of forces north. We haven't received anything, as you can see, from the Ukrainian side, but according to the Russians, they continue attempts to attack the industrial zone in the southern part of the northern Vovchansk, but for now without any geolocations confirming this. And we have reported that the Russians continue moving in the eastern part of Vovchansk, as gaining significant progress and so on. According to group of forces north, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions for another 1,000 meters, summarized, let's say, from Kupiansk to Vovchansk, so in total. Now let's move further. We are going to the northern Kupiansk direction, and we're going to talk about Stepovo-Novoselovka. If you remember, during the previous video we were talking about the Russian attempts to clear the main road between Ivanovka and Stepovo-Novoselovka, trying to prepare the road before further offensive. We had reports and videos of how the Russians were trying to attack the Ukrainians using the northern roads of attack, and today we got a lot of let's say geolocations, a lot of videos of how the Russians were clearing and bombing the Ukrainian positions along the railways from Kislovodsk to Kupiansk. On this video we can see how the Russians were FPV droning and attacking the Ukrainian soldiers in the area, how the Russians were bombing this territory with let's say, flamethrower strikes. And to summarize everything, we see that this is another possible road of Russian attack. So as soon as the Russians finish the clearing of these three roads, they will start the greatest offensive with the purpose to capture this village completely. Now let's move further to the south. We haven't received anything from the southern Kupiansk direction, from the central Kupiansk direction, but about the south we have additional update. The Russian sources published the video of how they were attacking the Ukrainian forces to the east of Nevskaya. After very heavy artillery preparation, artillery strikes, and aviation strikes, the Russians began offensive with a limited group of forces, and as a result of offensive, the Russians captured these tree lines, and the Ukrainians that were located here were forced to fall back further to the north in direction of these trenches. So there's still a lot of job to do, but we see that the Russians start moving from to the west, from the east to the west in direction of Nevskaya. Now let's move further to the south. We have additional updates from Siversk direction, from every single, let's say, part of Siversk area. We got more details and more confirmations of Russian attempts to attack in direction of the stronghold in the vicinity of Verkhnekamianska and in direction of the rock mountain by the name of Bila Gora. The Russians were mainly are using the Moza stormtroopers. On this video, we can see another attempt to capture, to hold positions in the vicinity of ruined and destroyed vehicles of the armed forces of Russian Federation that were destroyed during the previous days of clashes. So this is the video this video was made here. So we can see that the Russians are trying to establish control first of all over these territories. So for now, this is the main priority of the Russians, to capture this territory, because this is something like the base of the hill. I'll remind you that the biggest hill, the biggest point on this direction is located here. So the Russians basically want to cut this territory and to cut the hill from the south. And of course, the Russians are pushing further from the Bilogorovka to the south as well. So this is the picture on this direction. Furthermore, we got very interesting video from Avdiivka direction. The Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians made lots of attempts to counterattack. The author of this video says that Ukrainians were counterattacking the Russian forces, and the Russians were bombing the, let's say, counterattackers of armed forces of Ukraine. So the Ukrainians were moving something like this, and the Ukrainians were met with a heavy artillery fire. Some were among these brushes, these tree lines, and among these grass or something like this. The Russians were bombing the Ukrainians with artillery, with FPV drone strikes. This video confirms that most likely, as a result of clashes during the previous days, the Russians managed to establish control over this territory as well. We got reports of that, but we didn't have any geolocations confirming this. So now we have more or less reliable confirmation that the Russians control this territory, at least based on the attempts of Ukrainian side to counterattack. We got another confirmation from the Russian sources that they did capture the tree lines and the fortifications in the vicinity of Razdolovka. For now, without any geolocations confirming this, but this is third report in a row, and now this report we got from the official statement. For example, paratroopers of 106 Guards Airborne Division broke the resistance of the Ukrainian armed forces east of Razdolovka and began fighting for the K heights. As soon as the main lines of the Ukrainian armed forces come under Russian control, the entire defense of the Ukrainian armed forces inside the populated area will be useless. So the Russians are fighting for this territory, and they, according to information we have, the Russians are moving further to the west with the purpose to get Pirezhne. So if the Russians are able to do this, Ukrainians will be forced to fall back from Razdolovka automatically. Now we're moving to Chasiv Yar, and probably the most important updates are coming from this stronghold. We got a lot of geolocations. We have some map updates. According to Deep State, the Russians managed to improve their positions, but according to the real picture on the ground, we have a real video of Russian soldiers moving in this part of Chasiv Yar. The video was geolocated. On this video, we can see the Russian stormtroopers crossing the street from one building to another. There were several groups of stormtroopers, and after they cross the street, they start clearing another building. One important thing that I would like to point your attention, that there is almost no resistance from the Ukrainian side. Most of the Ukrainian forces have already abandoned their positions in the eastern part of the eastern Chasiv Yar, and now the Ukrainians are concentrated mainly in this citadel of the eastern Chasiv Yar. So this is the main base. This is not just the main base, this is the main area that Ukrainians are planning to use for urgent evacuation. So if something goes wrong, and currently everything goes wrong, they will start running away to this part of Chasiv Yar through this citadel. So most likely during the next few days, maybe even during the weekend, the Russians will establish complete control over the territory, and they will begin the final storm of Chasiv Yar. We are talking about the western part of the eastern Chasiv Yar. Now let's move further to Avdiivka area. We have significant reports from this direction as well. Very heavy clashes are taking place inside of Sokil. I believe you've already seen the B video of how the Russian BTR met the Ukrainian Bradley in a very close combat, and they were fighting, and as a result of clashes, the Russian BTR was damaged probably and lost its combat capabilities, but the Russians managed to, let's say, enter the landing area and to land infantry there. Also, we have reports that later the Ukrainians Bradley also was destroyed as a result of entering the minefields. After that, the Ukrainians also abandoned their positions, and that clashes between the Russians and the Ukrainian forces were supported by another Ukrainian tank that located to the north, that is Abrams, but the Abrams also, or Leopard, sorry, but Leopard also was destroyed as a result of Russian FPV drone strike. So if we return back and summarize everything, the Russian BTR was moving along this line, and the Ukrainian beam Bradley was moving along this line. Somewhere here, both machines met each other. The Ukrainian Bradley moved further to the east, and Russian Batera moved further to the west. And somewhere here, the Russians landed the infantry, and the infantry start, let's say, digging in deeper and establishing the foothold on the direction. After that, the Ukrainians, let's say, entered the territory and got on mine and were destroyed, or maybe they got on, let's say, under the FPV drone strike and also was destroyed. And during all those strikes, the Ukraine Leopard was here in this area, but he was also destroyed as a result of probably FPV drone strike. So the Russians now have a lot of geolocation confirming that the Russians control more than 80% of Sokil, and of course they would, in the very near future, the Russians are planning to move further to the west and to develop their positions in this area. We have some videos from Murmansk. For example, on this video we can see how the Ukrainians managed to discover the Russian warehouse, and as a result of FPV drone strike, the Russian warehouse was destroyed. This is a very important video because this video shows that the Russians have already regrouped, finished regrouping, and brought their artillery positions, their, let's say, munitions, their, let's say, weapon very close to the line of combat contact, and the Russians are ready to move further to the west in direction of Yasnobrodovka, Skuchne, and Mizhova. Now let's move further to the south. We have some geolocation from Krasnogorovka. The Russians are bombing and attacking and preparing the, let's say, begun artillery preparation before further offensive operation to the northern and the northwestern part of Krasnogorovka. On this video we can see how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian positions in the building. So as I understand, the battle for this stronghold is going to be finished also very, very soon. Nothing from South Donetsk, nothing from Staromayorsk, nothing from Urazhayna. Very important updates we continue receiving from Ukraine, more precisely from Ukraine-France, let's say, union. Today we got reports that France will transfer 5 Mirage 2000 aircraft to Ukraine. And this is a very important statement for you to understand why France decided to send Ukrainians Mirage 2000. The main purpose of the Mirage 2000 for the Ukrainian armed forces is to launch long-range Scalp cruise missiles or Storm Shadow type analogs against targets in Russian rear. Mirage 2000 was specially tailored for them. American F-16s are not adapted to these missiles. Transferring to new suspensions will take time, which the Ukraine armed forces do not have. The Mirage 2000 can also drop awesome guided bombs. The destruction range of these bombs is up to 60-70 kilometers. Based on this, we can conclude that the Su-24, once converted for launching storms, is running out of the Ukraine armed forces. So the main statement, the main reason why France decided to give Ukrainians Mirage 2000 is that Ukrainians are out of Su-24 that they had at the beginning of the special military operation. Most of them were destroyed. The question is how the Russians managed to destroy the Ukrainian Su-24. And we can find this answer, the answer to this question, in this small post that also was published by the Russians. Ukraine armed forces resources report that Ha-101 cruise missile has acquired a cluster warhead. Let us remind you that in March it becomes known that this missile system has 2 combat units. Now one of them is cluster and the second one is high explosive fragmentation. If you remember, during the previous days we got significant number of reports of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian airfield in the vicinity of Starokonstantinov. And as a result of those strikes, this is Starokonstantinov, this is the airfield where the Ukrainians were keeping their Su-24. In the beginning of the special military operation, the Russians were bombing this territory without cluster, let's say, part. And now the Russians start bombing this area, this airfield, with cluster part, and that led to significant losses among the Su-24. So that's why the Ukrainians were, let's say, forced to, intensify the process, and the Western countries were forced to intensify the process to send Ukraine's Mirage 2000 that can also use this type of weapon. So this is it. Now, nothing, let's say, about the involvement of France of the conflict, just the technical requirements to replace Su-24 that were destroyed as a result of Russian strikes with new missiles, with something new, and which doesn't need time to, let's say, to create or adopt or to change something or something like this. So this is the situation. Furthermore, we got additional updates from Russia, from Putin. He reported that the executive power of the Ukraine has lost its legitimacy. It looks like we're dealing with usurpation of power in Ukraine. So basically, Zelensky was was recognized as the dictator and usurpator by Russia, and of course Russia allies. And I believe that soon the same statement we're going to receive from China. And also Putin said that there are no plans for mobilization in Russia since there is no need for it. According to him, last year 300,000 people signed contracts to participate in special military operation, and since the beginning of this year 160,000. So significant number. The Russians have enough of manpower to continue the special military operation. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you we can end any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.